I just wanted to introduce really quickly who we have with us today. Todd, can you kick it off for us?
Yeah, sure. My name is Todd Bailey. I am a principal consultant. My areas of expertise tend to be data architecture and data warehousing concepts and data design. And I work in the US branch of Pomerol Partners.
Awesome. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Shivam.
Yes, thank you. So my name is Shivam. I'm the solution specialist at Time Xtender, and I've been in the low-code space for a while. And as soon as I saw Time Xtender, I was blown away when I first joined. And it's a great solution. So
Awesome. We've been enjoying getting to know you for sure. And David, last but not least.
Hi, David Carson. I work for Pomerol Partners in the UK. And I've been doing ETL and data analytics activities for over a decade using various tools.
We're happy that you're here with us today. And I've got my coffee here because this is our coffee conversation. So cheers. Thanks guys for joining us.
Cheers.
And I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say. It's going to be fun. So what do you got for us, Todd?
So I thought we would start going through the Microsoft SSIS tool, which has kind of been around for it's been around for a long time. It was kind of one of the first tools to do this, and just kind of give an overview of the tool. So the tool is, it's ubiquitous. Many companies have it, and it tends to be spread out within companies also. So you may have a marketing department that has one instance, and you've got finance over here that's got another, and they are basically, they're building things in many cases kind of in a silo, separate from the other parts of the company. So that's good and bad, right? I mean, it's good that the tool is easy to pick up and learn, but it tends to rely on a lot of what we call tribal knowledge. Like if a person were to leave, the code is not very well picked up and supported by another person. And also, when you start installing it across different groups, you start getting different numbers, right? Because I may use this source for finance data, you may use X, I may use Y, and before long the numbers don't match, and we may not know what the version of the truth is. So that's what we're seeing in our clients quite a bit with SSIS.
So Todd, I have a question for you. So what is kind of like the architecture, or how long SSIS has been on the market? And a follow-up to that is, what is the process of creating new data connections?
That's a great question. So honestly, I'm not sure of the start date of SSIS. It's been on the market, I think, my entire career. It's been something that I've been aware of. So I guess maybe over 20 years. I'm not positive.
I'm so curious if anyone knows the actual start date without Googling it. Like, does anyone just know that off the top of their head? I'm not sure. Maybe David does. David, do you know the start date of SSIS? Off the top of your head.
I don't. I know it was around about 15 years ago, but so 15 years.
Yeah. So maybe
I
not,
was
maybe
still
not 20 years ago.
I was still a baby back then.
Let's not talk about age. We're
You're still in preschool at that point. So it's been on the market for a very long time. It's what we used to call client server type software. It's not built for kind of the new modern cloud environment. It's built for more of a, I've got my laptop, I connect to a SQL Server instance over here, via an IP address, and I do development. And a lot of the development would actually live on my individual client. It wouldn't be in the cloud, and it wouldn't be stored there. So to your second question, Shivam, the way that data connections are created, there's a variety of ways, but you do have to create, like if you wanted to go and connect to, say, Salesforce or Marketo or some of these modern packages or ERP, CRM packages, you'd have to code that yourself, or you'd have to buy a connector to do that. SSIS does not come with its own set of connectors.
That must be very cumbersome, though.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and it's also expensive, right? I mean, it takes time, it takes money, and sometimes the connectors, it can take quite a long time to get them to work. I'm thinking back to a project I was on a while back, and we thought we had the right Salesforce connector, and it took us the better part of 3 or 4 or 5 days to actually get it to connect and respond in a timely manner.
So is there like a lot of good support available for documentation or help for any of these connectors, or it's just you have to figure it out yourself?
No, not for the connectors. There tends to not be a lot of good connect, that's a very good point that you bring up, because one of the things that I have been impressed with Time Xtender, it comes with, I think, maybe 300 connectors right out of the box.
Yep.
Which really speeds up, and there's no extra cost for that. So if you buy the Time Xtender license, you get all these connectors, and then and Time Xtender is always in the process of developing new ones too. So I think when I first became aware of Time Xtender last year, there were maybe only 250. I think it's over 300 now.
Yeah, and if there's something out of the box that's not available, you can always connect it as a REST API. Everything is now available as an API.
Yep.
And you can connect to go from a CSV to Instagram to Salesforce to SAP to anything, which has been amazing. And there's great documentation help as well. So you don't just need me to help you out with connecting to any data source. Even Colette can just read through the documentation and help you out.
Yeah. It's pretty straightforward. If you can get to your Time Xtender client, you can connect it. So, and that kind of leads in maybe to other things that I think Time Xtender has an advantage on, because it's a centralized cloud-based tool, right? It's made for connecting to Snowflake or to, Azure Data Lake. That's the way it was designed. And because it sits in a centralized place, you tend to have one version of the truth. You don't have multiple people across departments building their own Time Xtender, solutions.
Yeah.
So
a good way that I explained to, or how I understood that, is just think of it as an abstraction layer on top of where it sits. So Time Xtender doesn't control or hold your data at all. So you have the control over your data. So you can do whatever you want. And Time Xtender will maintain it in one place and just use the metadata for everything.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That also, Time Xtender does something also that SSIS doesn't do, which is there's the whole concept now of different data sets for different roles of people, right? You've got users who may just be writing reports. They're not necessarily interested in the underlying data except to get that report out. And then you got data scientists, data architects who have different needs for that data. They may be a data scientist may be looking for patterns in that data that he can extract out of it. And Time Xtender is very good at taking subsets of the data and allowing that to do. So if I'm a user just writing finance reports, I would get one set of data. If I'm a data scientist and say I'm trying to find out patterns in this manufacturing data, I would get a whole separate set of data that would allow me to do that. So that's also something that SSIS was really never designed to do. And at Time
Xtender
does
can't
quite well.
Create basically like curated data sets or data marts in SSIS.
No, you can't. I mean, you can. There's probably you can do it, but it would be incredibly cumbersome. It's not. It's not like Time Xtender where it's very easy to look at your data warehouse and make subsections of that and publish it.
Now you bring a great point, Todd. For example, I've had a customer that had curated data set, going to their finance, and they were doing reports in Power BI, and the other sales department was using Qlik. So you can create those multiple data marts and have different endpoints, and it will just communicate. So if David goes in and adds a new field that finance needs it, they just need to hit refresh on their Power BI dashboard, and that's it. And that field is available.
And that's incredibly powerful. I mean, especially for older guys like me who've been in this business a long time. That's a huge step forward from the way we used to have to do business when we had to code things, and publishing, a new data set was a huge deal. It was a very big deal with a lot of error, very error prone too. So I think that's the big. So if I had to kind of summarize maybe how I see Time Xtender, the big advantage is the ability to have this one version of the truth. You're centralized with all your developments, probably just a small set of people developing in the same area. You have all these connectors that come right out of the box. And we're going to get into more about how it does history and slowly changing dimensions, which is quite amazing to me. Also being somebody who wrote a lot of that code when I was younger. And then also just the provisioning aspect you talked about.
Yeah, well, I'm glad I didn't have to write any code. So that was one thing that I was doing for 5 years. And I was like, you know what? I don't need to be doing that anymore. That's how I got into low code. So
Cool. Well, maybe so that's a very good intro there, Shivam. Maybe you could talk about kind of the what SSIS has developed into in the Microsoft stack and how that kind of works with or exists with Time Xtender.
yeah, no, that's a great question. So what Microsoft now came out with is what we call it as Azure Data Factory. It's, in my mind, it's an evolution of SSIS. So you can do everything in cloud. So it has this great compute engine, have different nodes. You can do everything in ADF. You can create your pipelines. You can create your data warehouse, do all your transformations in ADF, as you're talking about slowly changing dimensions.
Okay.
And you can do that. But
so that's a good question.
Yes.
I'm sorry. What
Yes.
So if you have ADF, do you really
Yes.
I mean, maybe Microsoft would probably tell you don't need anything else, but would you,
No.
how do you see that? Do you see ADF complementing Time Xtender, and what would that combination look like if you were to have both? What would be
So
kind
that's
of
a
the
great
ideal?
question. So I think the first question that I would ask is how easy it is to do it in ADF. How expensive is it going to be? What is kind of like the knowledge that you need to do all these things, right? So,
Right.
if they have templates, so you can go through, spend 15, 20 minutes going through a template, then going through a video and say how I'm going to create my slowly changing dimensions and then try to do it. But you can do the same thing in Alteryx, Informatica, everything. But
Right.
with Time Xtender, like you were saying that you were amazed by, which I was shocked by, that you could do, this SCD in like less than 5 minutes if you set up,
Right.
or even
Right.
a very simple incremental load. You can just set that up based on your modified date. You run your daily jobs. It just keeps the data moving and refreshing up to your semantic layer, which is your curated data marts, right?
So if you were to use Time Xtender as, say, a complement to Azure Data Factory, how would you could use a source from Azure Data Factory and pull that into Time Xtender, right? And
yeah,
massage
so
or curate it as you wish.
for what in my mind, Azure implementation is great for if you have like a ADL Gen 2, you're storing your raw data in a data lake, and you have a Azure SQL, and then you can use Time Xtender to transfer data. Time Xtender will create your ADF pipelines. So what Time Xtender does is relies on the other part of ADF, which is their computing powers, and then it will create your pipelines for you, right? So,
Okay.
if you're paying for your data there, right? So if you're like a small company, and you have less number of rows, right? Then you can use ADF because you're paying, from like kilobyte, megabyte to terabytes. That's their consumption model. And that's where, another big difference that Time Xtender that I feel like is that our consumption model is not based on the volume of data at all. You can have, 1 kilobyte of data to 10 terabytes. You're just going to be charged the same, right?
Right.
So
how does that model work, Shivam? What are you charged basically by instances, or how does Time Xtender do that? Okay.
So we charge by what we call as instances. So let me explain it to you that what operational data exchange is our first instance. So think of it, let me give you a grocery store example. So think of it as a truck going to all the farms, and all your farms are all your data sources. So, ODX is one instance, you just need one, and you can have, 10 different farms. It brings all the data and stores your raw data. It can be an on-prem SQL or an Azure data lake. So that's your one instance, and you get monthly charged. And then the next is your modern data warehouse. Again, so if it's a cost saving method, you can have an on-prem SQL, and that saves a lot of cost there. But if you want to be in Azure, that's, your infrastructure, your cost associated with it. Time Xtender will only charge you for that one data warehouse. That is like, a grocery store distribution area where everything comes in, and then you curate your data marts, that is your semantic model. And that's where, you get charged for that particular instance. So thinking of it as a Safeway in your city. So David will have one, I'll have one, you'll have one. So those are 3 different instances. And you can, push data through your distribution center, which is your modern data warehouse, to all these, send apples to David, I'll send some tomatoes over you, and I'll send some oranges to Colette. And, and then Colette's, husband needs dog food. And then you can go in and, David can be like, oh, I missed out sending dog food to Colette's Safeway. Let me just quickly add it. And Colette's husband can just go in, pick dog food, and be like, here you go. You don't have to go to PetSmart for it. So
I do go to PetSmart. How did you know that? I do go to PetSmart. Shivam, are we going to be able to see any of Time Xtender? I'm so curious now after hearing about all of this.
No, for sure. I would love to show you a little bit, show you little tiny Time Xtender.
Just like a little taste, a little tidbit.
A preview, just
that would be great. And maybe while you're bringing that up, I guess, Shivam, the bottom line is if I've made an investment in ADF, I don't have to throw that away, right? I can just supplement that with Time Xtender.
No, for sure.
Okay.
A lot of people that we see are going through their digital transformation journey and want to move from on-prem to, cloud. A great example is that, for now, if you're on-prem SQL, right? And your CTO comes in, I'm like, guys, we need to be on cloud in 6 months to a year. You build out your Azure infrastructure, and now you have to make all the changes across your ODX, your data warehouse, in every place. And with Time Xtender, all you need to do is just change the connection strings in your admin portal, and that's it. And when you do a deploy and execute, it will automatically take care of it, do all your, go from on-prem to Azure SQL or ADL in just a click, and that's it. You don't have to do anything. And another great thing is that, you can use ADF, and Time Xtender will generate those pipelines for you if it's a full Azure implementation. But say, if you need ADF to transfer, you have like an on-prem or something. So you can do that with Time Xtender leverages the compute powers of ADF and the runtime. So thinking of it as like an egress. So you're going out, so you don't have to open any firewalls, ports, and that can be another headache people have. And we don't need to deal with that. But
nice. Good, great. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Oh, for sure.
I'm excited. David, have you seen it before? Will this be your first time you've seen it?
It's my first time, hence why I've been pretty quiet so far. So
yeah, no, I love it. I love it. We're just absorbing it in. We're absorbing in all the things.
Well, hopefully, David, you'll be as amazed as when I first saw Time Xtender. I was like, oh, you can do that in 2 clicks.
I'm excited to hear what David thinks about it. David's one of our subject matter experts here at Pomerol, and so I'm intrigued to hear his thoughts about it once he sees it.
Yeah, I'm too.
Yeah.
All right, so let me kind of show you what it is. And how about I show, Todd, you were talking about slowly changing dimensions.
Yeah.
Why don't we go through that, and you can talk about how painful it is.
Yes, we can do that. I want to see how it does it. I mean, I have seen it, but it's always amazing to me when I see it, kind of coming from my background. Yeah.
Yeah. So I hope you can see my screen. So this is our desktop client version. So right here, I have my DSA, which is my staging area. This is my modern data warehouse. You want to call it presentation layer. Your single version of truth. As you can see, I have a lot of tables here. So this is DSA is where I do all my transformations. And what I need, I just put it in my MDW. It's all a drag and drop approach. And we're trying to move from left to right, DSA to MDW to our sales semantic model, right here. So let me open a good example that I love to show people because it's so simple and so easy. Is a cars table that I just created. So as you can see here, it's a cars table. It has, a model, color, and just an ID field. I just kept it pretty simple. And so here, as you can see, this is my history settings. And as you can see, there's an H right here. So I've enabled it as a history table. And as you can see here, it's type 2. I've selected color. So I'll insert a new record when the color changes, right? So let me go here in my DSA, because this is where I want to do all my transformations at. So Todd or David, do you have a color preference?
David is the guy that races motorcycles. He must. I don't know what color
We'll
his
go for orange.
motorcycles are.
Orange.
Orange one.
Well,
Yeah.
Is that your motorcycle racing team color?
It is. Yeah.
Oh,
well, that's
perfect.
Time Extender's color. So David,
Love it.
unknowingly,
Hmm.
you're like Pomerol and Time Extender's ambassador.
Love
Maybe you
it.
guys could sponsor his team. I think.
Wow.
Yeah,
Well,
we
look
need a
at
Time
the
Xtender
ones.
sticker on his motorcycle.
Well,
Yeah,
if David is
exactly.
amazed by it, then I will do that. I'll talk to our CEO because
No
we do
pressure.
sponsor cars and races in the Nordics. So it could be a
Interesting.
great expansion in the UK. So now I just changed the color. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a deploy and execute right here. And I'm just going to start it. So this, when I'm saving it right here, so this is kind of like a version control. So think of it, I'm like added David's favorite orange color. And then, oops, can't type today. And
So
then
this will be attached to the record, basically the history.
no,
record.
so this will be attached to your instance.
Okay,
So,
to your instance. Okay.
so this is versioning for your instance, right?
Got
So
it.
you come back and go like, hey, I want to see David's changes, and you go back, okay, what we did here, so you can roll back to that saved version.
Got it.
And now, so it's going to do a deploy and execute. So a little bit about deploy and execute, I'm sure everybody understands it, but what Time Extender does is deploy is basically it'll create your scripts, and then execute is it's going to run those scripts and load the data for you. And another thing right here is that what Time Extender also does that, I love to talk about it, is intelligent execution. So Time Extender automatically identifies any kind of dependencies that is there in your data area. So right now, as you can see, there are multiple threads running in my screen. So it automatically identifies it. But hey, for example, if you want to do it manually and set your, this is my first step, this is my second step, you can do that in an execution package as well. So just a little, it's something to throw out there. As you can see, I have 8 different threads running. So, and you can see it's pretty quick. So,
and the threads are actually, those are different places that the dimension is touching in the model. Exactly. What is the thread doing exactly?
So that's a great question. So as you can see here, it's running these executing ODX transfer. It's running Beautiful. Your data cleansing rules.
Yeah.
So those are the different, because I'm doing a whole deploy and execute for the whole of my MDW instance. And I'm just refreshing the whole thing. Okay. So, and it's complete. So as you can see here, so that's why you see multiple threads. If it was just one table, you will not going to use multiple threads for that, right?
Yeah. So that's a good point, though, that you just basically made a change, and it propagated that out to everywhere in the model that would be affected by it.
Correct.
You didn't have to really write any code at all.
Nope. So another great thing, so if I had to do, I'll just show you. So here you can just select only modified table, so you don't have to run the whole thing. So you just made changes in a small table, 1 table or 2 tables, even 3. So it will just run a deploy and execute for only those 1 to 3 tables, whatever it is. You don't have to refresh everything. And now let's just go here and preview this table. And we see the tram model is now orange, David.
Wow. So that went by kind of fast, Shivam, but I tell you that I'm probably the oldest guy on the call here. And I remember when I got out of college, I would spend, and this is no exaggeration, to write the code to do a slowly changing dimension would take one person a full week to write that code. I mean, it would just the change that you've shown here, that orange is now the active color for that model, would be something that I would have written, you know, it's probably not an exaggeration, hundreds of lines of code, because it's very complex. I remember this is the first thing I saw last year when I became associated with Time Xtender, and I thought this was like magic almost. I was like, this is incredible.
Yeah, when I tell people
that, silly question though, like if someone doesn't have Time Xtender, how would they do that? What you just did?
Well, there are some of the other ETL packages have the ability to do this, but it's not as as hands off,
right?
And then in some cases you'd have to write a lot of that code yourself.
You have to go in and write a lot of that code, which would take longer. Like that took what, a minute?
Much longer. Much longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that's a great question for David, right? Like,
David doesn't use Time Xtender. So David, what do you think about this?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, in order to identify you slowly changing data line by line, you have to compare them. This is my old data set. This is my new data set. You know, where do we have changes? And then the identified changes, you have to put them into a separate history table if you want to retain that history, which is, you know, where all your lines and lines of code come from. I've got a bunch of questions that I'd like to ask. I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but just to kind of validate that my understanding so far is correct.
Yeah.
So
we'll take few, and
all right,
I'll continue the demo a little bit as well. Show you two more interesting things.
So Time Xtender, you were saying before it was like a overarching kind of platform that had, you know, in this case, the DSA, the MDW, and the semantic layer that were beneath it. It's not reading just read only looking at this. So you just made changes there, and that they've actually written it back down into the underlying kind of platform. Questions I had were just options available for the DSA.
No, that is a great question, David. So right now you can do, you know, your data warehousing instance can be any, you know, cloud, you know, on cloud, it can be Azure SQL, Synapse, you know, on-prem could be SQL on-prem. And fun fact, we just launched Snowflake storage support for your data warehousing needs.
Oh, wow.
We had like a lot of people in our ears be like, where's Snowflake? Where's Snowflake?
That's awesome.
Our customers need Snowflake.
That is awesome.
That's awesome.
That's a big deal.
And for your ODX, David, you can have ADL. ADL is so cheap, so you can use ADL as just dump all your raw data from 10 to or data sources. You can just dump it all in to an ADL or a SQL Server storage.
Yeah, the ADL's got real cheap. I was looking at it just yesterday, and it's a terabyte, it's $20 or something a month. So you know what Time Xtender also does is that, you know, when you load data into ODX, it creates all your hierarchical folder structure as well with your Parquet files. So it creates everything for you. You just execute a transfer task and just wait. You know, if it's not a lot of data, you just wait a few minutes, like how I showed you. And I did a whole load. So right now, my ODX is on ADL, and my data warehouse is on-prem SQL. So it's like a hybrid solution, right? So you don't have to be full cloud, full on-prem. You can make hybrid like how I have. And then if you want to change it, just change the connection strings and you're good to go. Todd, I want to show you another very cool feature that I have.
Great.
Let me show you real quick. So this is my curated sales semantic model right here. And, you know, David made a report for Colette for, you know, sales order detail. And Colette goes, how is this GrossLine total coming? She asked David, can you give me, like, this does not look right. And she's like, I don't know. So, so to find a data lineage, you just right click this field and click on data lineage. So Time Xtender will generate your data lineage for you right here in just 2 clicks.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
It's
Is that
pretty
a flower?
interesting.
Is that a flower, Shivam?
It's a lotus.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
It's very peaceful. It's like
That
meditative.
is,
Looking at that.
we want data, mind, and heart at Time Xtender.
Aw.
So that's
Cute.
why the
So
lotus.
you're basically showing here, Shivam, every relationship all the way out to the final, the layer that's exposed to the report writer, the user, all the way back to where it occurred in your data source.
Correct.
SQL server,
absolutely.
ADL, or wherever.
Yeah, and we'll even go further back from the source that it's coming from.
Yeah.
So here is
cool.
your semantic layer, which is where this GrossLine total is. And then it goes back to the data area MDW, and then goes to DSA. And now in DSA, we did a transformation, a custom transformation, which is, we multiplied order quantity and unit price. Colette is a little demanding, so she wanted David to do this.
I mean, it's true. It's true. It's fine.
And
you get a little bossy
here,
sometimes. It's cool.
So here you can see that, your order quantity and unit price then combined into this one transformation. And now here we see that order quantity is coming from ODX data source, which is AdventureWorks, and unit price. So imagine if, you merge 2 different data sources, you will have, order quantity, unit price, which then went into DSA. Then it synchronized the data, so it had just one merged data set in DSA, and then you had this custom transformation just right here.
Yeah, that's really neat. I just actually before this meeting, I was working with another similar tool. And
Todd, this isn't a meeting. This is
that.
This is our podcast that
What
we
now?
decided. This isn't a meeting. This is a podcast.
It's a Groundhog Day special.
It's very cool the way that you in that tool you can't choose an exact field. You can try to map back an entire like an entity or a table, but to be able to find one field and map it all the way back is quite
to the data source. It's a great tool to explain to people as well. Say, some John Fitz joined David's team, and to explain it to him, data lineage is a great tool, but even better is something that I want to show you. But first, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
The question that I have for you, and for David, actually, since he does great things in the ETL space, is how much time do you spend on documentation? Do you have like a whole resource building out documentation, or are you guys like me who do it like last 2 weeks of a project and then scrambling to do that?
And nobody wants to do it, right? Yeah, nobody wants to do it.
No, we always have great intentions to document as we go, but it always ends up as a bad scramble at the end, using usually a Microsoft Word template, which would then, copy and paste all sorts of, screenshots and stuff into. I might have a head start on you here because I've heard that you've got special things for documentation. I believe that you can generate some stuff. So it'd be interesting to see what that looks like.
Special powers. So you can get a documentation in 2 clicks. Another great thing is that say you updated a field or added a new transformation, you can just click documentation, and that's it. It updates and generates that documentation for you. You're not doing anything, and it's a great tool to explain some new person joined your team, or for audit purposes. So you can come here, change your fonts, change colors. Let's put some blue in because that's Todd's favorite color since he's wearing blue.
Yeah, nice shirt, Todd.
And
Pomerol
then you
blue.
just
Pomerol blue. That's right.
And it'll generate a PDF right here for you. And here it gives you all the details related to your modern data warehouse. As you can see here, it generates your full documentation. right here shows you the MDW table of contents. Let's scroll down. You have your blue right here. Shows you all the date tables. So I've added a date dimension in my modern data warehouse. So it gives you all the fields,
Oh, wow.
any custom field that is there. So let's go to.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's probably really good for like auditing too, right? And just kind of
Yes.
reviewing what you've done.
For sure.
Well, I mean, I know, and in the past places I've worked, this would have been there. We would have had a consultant on staff that this would be their full-time job. Like they would specialize in something like this because it was so time consuming to do.
No,
now they can do other things. Now they spend all their time doing documentation.
See that, you know what, that's what I tell people, that you don't need a 10, 12 people team. You can have a 3, 4 people team, and then you can multiply your revenue by doing multiple different projects in the span of time that you would do one, right? And especially it's a cost saving method for your customers. So what I tell or see is that, you know, generally any customer spends 70 to 80% of their IT budget to keeping the lights on, you know, maintaining projects right now, and spend just a tiny chunk to innovate. But now that thinking of that as a pyramid, now we are flipping the pyramid. So now you're just having that 20% cost, and now you have 80% to automate and innovate and move to AI. Everybody wants to move to AI. Moving to ML was a thing, and doing all those algorithms, and now you can move to AI and, you know, innovate and make your own chat GPT now. So
that's seriously impressive though. And
yes, it gives you your
it
gives you a relationship diagram right here. If you see right here, it also gives you any custom transformations that is there.
Yeah,
so and it shows you where it's coming from, what data type. It's all here.
Yeah, and usually when we create documentation, whenever we make a change to the code, we have to remember to represent that.
Update it, yeah.
In documents. Well, with the amount of time it takes to create new documentation, you wouldn't even bother, would you? Just create a new document from here, and it's bang up to date.
And with version control and everything else, like version control, making sure it's updated in all the right places, making sure there's not multiple copies in different places with different dates on them. So you basically just make your change, then rerun that whole documentation report.
Just another click, and that's it. And you have the updated document, and, you know, send it to your customers for audit, your compliance team.
And even if your customer isn't super tech savvy, it's easy to read that report. Like it was easy just for me to review that.
And I think what David, the point, just to expand a little bit on what David said, I think the Achilles heel of the documentation has always been you produce it at the end of a project, and then you basically never go back and update it. No one, I mean, you make all these changes and it gets out of date almost immediately. Like if you wait a month, you've probably made 10 changes, and I guarantee probably none of them are reflected in your document.
Well, it's probably easy to help set expectations too with the customer. If you do your first sets of configuration or whatever you guys do, and then you run the report, they can look, sign off on it, maybe make sure you guys are both on the same expectation playing field, and then you can rerun it again at several key points of the project. So keeps everyone the same, it keeps everyone very aligned on what's going on.
For sure. Another great thing that, you know, I don't think that I wanted to show is, so here I have my GrossLine total right here, and the custom transformation is auto quantity and unit price. What I've seen a lot is, you know, if I edit this field, you know, say unit price Europe, for example, I can't type today, but, and if you see right here, it automatically updates the field. So thinking of how, Todd, you were doing in SSIS, remember, if you had to make one change, you have to do it in all dependent areas, in all tables, writing the alter table script. But with Time Xtender, you just make one change, and where all it is used, it's automatically going to do that change.
That's very impressive. Yeah.
Well, let's hope it impressed David too. So
well, yeah, going back to the old SSIS world, typically we tended to use those to kick off sequences of stored procedures. So any change to a field name the usual resolution for that would be to try and run it, see where it fails, and then depart, and then run it again, see how far it gets the next time. You know, until you get to the point where your code's not broken anymore because you've made made a change. Whereas if I'm reading that correctly, everything that was using that field has been automatically updated following the change.
And then you just deploy and execute, it'll make changes to that field, that column name, the alter table statement in your storage as well. So it'll change it there as well. So it'll write the script, it'll deploy it, everything, it'll do it for you. So that's pretty good that way, is that you don't have to do the same thing that, oh my Lord, where all did I use this field? Why did I change it? Now I regret that decision. So
yeah.
And guys, David, I feel like we could literally talk about documentation all day. We might have to have like a part 2, like just about documentation.
I was just going to tell David that I thought I was the only guy that used that method of implementation, like starting something and running it until it broke and then fixing that. that was my method also.
Well, we'll save all the other magic tricks for later now.
Yes.
So once you've built your kind of pipeline, sorry for using that terminology, can you automate it so that it, schedule to run on a daily basis or however?
So you can run a scheduled job from like your data transfer to your modern data warehouse to your semantic layer. So you want to refresh the data daily at 8 p.m. or 8 a.m. or 12 at midnight. It can automatically just schedule the job and it'll just run for you.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
So which is pretty helpful. So you don't have to keep on refreshing the record manually, but you can trigger it by time.
Automation is the best because again, it's a time saver. You don't have to think about or put down a reminder to do it at a certain time.
Right.
Set it and forget it.
Coming to David's point, you're creating very consistent pipelines and not any fragile pipelines that might just break. Something happens, and you're just keeping your fingers crossed.
Right.
Cool.
Well, that's really interesting. I mean, that really automates some of the most mundane things that people don't like to do, right? And we're not good at it either, because where there's always you never go back and update it like we were talking about. So that's really cool that you no longer have to worry about having all that stuff and it being useful to someone who joins your team and they don't know anything about your model or anything. So they can just pull that PDF and they can follow everything through.
Yeah.
So what do we did we have I know we've got maybe 10 minutes left. Did we want to do Purview possibly? Talk about Microsoft Purview?
Yeah, we could just talk very briefly about it. So Purview is a great tool. I don't know, David, if you've used it or know about it. So Purview is a great tool. You can get classification, data usage reports. It can do data lineage as well. But a caveat that I have is that it's very expensive. So that's a question to you, Todd, is what are your thoughts on Purview?
Well,
From
I think
Pomerol's perspective.
That's a good, I mean, we do have clients that use Purview. Like you said, it tends to be limited because of the cost. So you may see larger, companies, corporations who would use it, but probably more of the Pomerol sweet spot, like a mid-sized company, you don't see it as much just because of the cost. So I wonder, let me ask this, would Time Xtender be something that you could possibly just substitute for Purview, like the documentation you just showed us and the classifications? Could that be something that we could use instead of Purview, or we could maybe also just augment if we do own Purview?
So that's a great question. So Purview is a master data governance it's used for. So you can use Time Xtender with Purview. Say if you already have a Purview account, you could just supplement that with Time Xtenders. And great thing about it is that, Purview can give you data lineage, but cannot give you data lineage where, stored procedures or analysis services is used. So in that particular case, you can use Time Xtender for data lineage. So from semantic model, you can go all the way back. So that Purview doesn't, but Purview gives you classification of data, usage reports, and all the reporting on that aspect, which is great. But for a small to mid-sized company, I think data lineage from Time Xtender would be, much cost efficient, and because you don't need all that master data governance add-ons that you get, but you can make do with the data lineage. So kind of depends on the use case, but it can certainly complement. And we're not here to replace Purview at all, but.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's there's no extra cost, right? Also, like
Nope.
Time Xtender,
There's no
additional
cost.
module to buy or anything. It just right out of the box, it does that.
Yeah, it's an out of the box solution. You get documentation, data lineage, right? You can use that n number of times. You're not running kind of like Purview cost up. So
and you said before, Shivam, that the cost is not based on the amount of data. It's just based on the amount of instances. So if someone's looking to add Time Xtender in general, I'm sure a lot of people are thinking one more thing is going to add a cost. How does that cost compare to just everything else someone is probably using?
So that's a great question. So from a costing standpoint, it's how I say it as it's a blanket monthly recurring cost. So your cost doesn't go up or down like how Azure does,
which is good.
Yeah. So it's so that's why I say it's not based on the volume of data, but if it's like Azure, your cost depends on the number of bytes that you use. Or if you use more, then it goes up. If you use less, it goes down. So here it's not dependent on that. So you can. So you can go to Time Xtender's website. There's a lot of pricing information as well, so you can get your exact cost. And another reason to think about it, it gives you the tools to design or architect your solution in a much efficient way.
Which will save you money and time.
Yeah. So it's another way of thinking, right? We want to break those boundaries of how you used to do things to now how you're doing it. Break those walls and now think out of the box to design solutions. You don't need 3 modern data warehouses. You can just have one. You can have different data areas in it and create that. Or even you don't even need a different data area. You can just do all your transformations in just one place and have that as your presentation layer as well. That is of no cost. So in your modern data warehouse, you can have n number of data areas if you want. So no additional cost there. So.
Well, I know we only have a few minutes left. I know. So Todd, we'll let you go. And then afterwards, I know David said he had a couple questions.
Yeah,
so
why don't we
get those in before we run out of time.
Yeah, let's do the questions and then we can wrap it up. So
cool. All right.
Yeah, I've got through most of them, but I do have a few more. Cool. They are quite transactional. Ingestion of files, for example. I mean, the stuff that we've got nowadays, everything that's connected to the, to the cloud that you can get is all good. But does Time Xtender provide any extra functionality so you can grab hold of flat files or anything, from anywhere local, or can they be in a blob or? Yeah,
so Time Xtender, you can consume CSV, Excel from your local or your, if it's stored in an ADL in your data lake, for example. So you can, just get that and do it. So I have a small CSV file that I use, and it's called cities. So it has all the cities data. So I use that. And, if you have an API that gives you an XML or a JSON output, you can do that. Or if you have like a JSON flat file on your machine, you can just use that as well. It's pretty, it's not dependent on the location of where it is. Cool. Instead of HTTPS, you just do C:/ slashes. That's about it. That's the difference.
Nice and easy.
Just give the directory location. Yeah.
Cool. And the last one I had was we spoke about version control and making changes and going. it's happened in the past where you know, you've released a new version and someone's found an issue in the in code. So in terms of kind of rollback going to a previous version, how difficult or easy is that?
So it is, you know, from let's take it twofold. So if you have, say, your modern data warehouse, someone comes in, I come in, makes a mistake, and messes up the reports. So you can roll back to the last saved version where you have like a description. Say you added a new field, that's the latest one that you want to roll back to, you can just roll back. So you can roll back just your modern data warehouse instance, or you can roll back your SSL, depending on that, or if you want to roll back all of it, you can just do that as well. And then just do a deploy and execute, and it'll save that as your new version going forward.
Cool.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah. So, you know, you can, now we have, you know, Power BI Premium as an endpoint, you have Qlik, you have CSV, and your Power BI. So it's pretty amazing that way. So you can have multiple different data marts going to multiple different endpoints.
So for builders that use Qlik or Power BI predominantly, this would be really good for them to add in. Is that what I'm hearing?
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely.
So when you know, generate, I'm sure David will find this a little interesting. So when you deploy and execute a Power BI endpoint or Power BI Premium, so Time Xtender, you know, creates those XMLA file, which gives instructions to your Power BI on creating those tables and bringing in the data. So it writes those instructions for you. So that's why you just hit refresh on your Power BI dashboard and you get all the data readily available. So that's what Power BI Premium also uses. So hopefully that was pretty interesting little tidbit for you, David.
Yeah, it just makes the whole getting new data out to where it needs to be a load easier. So
yeah, so it writes that XMLA file for you. So there's nothing that as a user, you don't see anything. It's so seamless. To a data analyst, just sees that, oh, GrossLine total is now available to me. Well, that David did a great job, but.
Did that answer all your questions, David? Did you have anything else hard hitting that you're dying to know?
Oh, really? I might see a future of low code, no code.
Yeah. Can you see any? I mean, off the top of your head, and you don't have to name anyone by name, but do you see where this could be helpful with some of your current clients or some of your past clients that you've had?
Yeah, potentially. I think your biggest problem will be, you know, moving at the speed of a glacier. Usually the stumbling block there, but no.
Which is the ironic part, though, because people tend to move slow in making decisions about something that will make them faster and more efficient. So it's kind of like a interesting twist there. But hopefully some of the things that we've discussed today show some of the builders out there how like easily and seamless it is to incorporate this into what they're currently using. So I really appreciate you guys all being here with us today. Maybe we'll have to do a part 2 because I feel like we could have just talked for so much longer.
There's a lot of other things we could cover. So
I know. Well, maybe we'll do another one. But it was awesome to hear about how now Time Xtender supports Snowflake. I know that Time Xtender just posted a press release about that, which is really exciting. So people can go and look at that press release Time Xtender did about Snowflake. We have the link too, so you can reach out to us about that. There is a 30-day trial license also available. So we can all post information for Todd and for Shivam. You want to reach out and ask about questions about the 30-day trial. It's always fun to get in there and just like play around with it yourself. So
and I think that's a good point also, Colette. We've done that with other companies. We've done that a couple of times where we got the trial license and we actually built a proof of concept using our our people and also using Time Xtender, and that's a very effective way to see how fast you can take multiple data sets and actually build something of value.
Right.
Like
Don't just take our word for it.
Installing it to at the end of the week, you've got something you can actually write a Power BI report on. So that's a very powerful message that we can get out there.
Awesome. I'm excited to hear you and help people build some proof of concepts, POCs. See a lot of them coming in your future for Todd and Shivam. So thank you, David, for being on and for just asking all those awesome questions. I really appreciate it. And thank you guys all for tuning in and listening. If you have any questions about anything feel free to reach out to us. I'll also post some notes about where our top subjects have been during the podcast that you can scroll back or scroll forward and listen to those hot topics. So cheers. Thank you
Cheers.
again. You guys
Thanks,
have an awesome
everybody.
rest of your
It was a
day.
lot of
Thank
fun.
you.
Have a
Yes.
good one.
Bye.
Bye-bye.